Here we go. So you're going to start with the bolster on top of 2 blankets at the back of your mat. Okay, so that's going to be the back area. Now, how you reference the beginning of being on hands and knees could be that direction. It could be the direction towards your bolster. I want you to be able to get your bolster in the beginning. So I'm going to put a towel or blanket, whatever you choose, under the knees, so it's just easier. There's going to be less complaining for you if something's under there. And I want you to reach with the arms and not just the hands. I know that it looks like it's my hands on there, but there's certainly that extension out of my back. So when you put your hands on top of that stack of things, feel how the back musculature reaches, right, as your head lowers down. If this is a real difficult shape for you to stay with for a minute and it's just too much pull, what you could do is put some blocks underneath and just tuck your chin in and put your forehead on the blocks. Right? So this makes it quite simple this way. And that's to be used, right? If you find, oh, it's so much strain and I'm feeling as if things are kind of coming apart in your joints, then use some props. And so let's begin with this reach of the upper body and the awareness of the spinal column. And it's kind of heavy threads, right? This gives me a feeling like this is a heavy threading in my back, for better or worse, right? It can be a little bit intense. But start with either the head on the forehead on the blocks, or you're going to have your head between the arms. And as the spine gently warms up, breathe so that the ribs have a possibility of expansion. And feel that sensation of length in the armpits. And then let's take the hands off the bolster and bring the hands both over to the left side of your mat. So you're on the ground next to the blankets, you're not on the other side. And you just kind of wiggle your way so that your hips are moving a little to the right, your arms are stretching to the top left corner. So kind of like at about 10, 11 o'clock on the left side. Head bows down to the arms, maybe just the right arm. And do any little wiggling you need. If it's too much with the hand on the floor, the right hand, you could put it back up on the bolster. I kind of like that. Anything where I can just get this whole thread, this thick kind of weave of my side to stretch. If you have an injury in the shoulder, just be cautious, right? And then take your walk of your hands, your front paws, go walking on over to the other side. And then you just kind of lengthen, just like you would see an animal, even though you're animal too, but you know how there's this kind of crawly, oozy reach out from into the paw. So feel that reach to that left paw and let your head maybe bow to the center of the arms. Left hand can go back up on the bolster. Just working on reaching out from the center pieces. Good. And then come back to hands next to the blankets, right? So they're on floor space, and round your back into cat pose. So chin moves towards the chest. And then inhale, feel the arching of the spine. But as you create these patterns of movement, alternating, arching now and rounding or flexing, what in your mind's kind of opinion, what are those two movements, right? Arching and flexing. See if you can, become a little bit more personal in your body, even if the house has distractions, right? See if you can just really plug into this moment of movement as if it's all you got. This is it. Just this moment of moving the spine, and maybe more so your pelvis and hips is what you identify with. Okay, and you can take a reach back, hips back for some of us, let the hands be on the ground or the bolster again, last time in this shape, or toes under, knees up into a downward dog shape. So the heels start to flow towards the floor. But as the heels flow down, there's a few of us that might prefer a little more of a child's pose variation. If your shoulders don't want to work with that position, you can always reach your knees apart and your hips back towards your heels and be head down, okay? And you could put a block under your head as well. That might be easier in this position. So make a choice, one of these two, lifted hips or hips back and down. And accentuate the field of breath in the backbones. I know it's mostly ribs. It's not as if you feel breath in your hamstrings or your hips, but I don't know, maybe it's an endless idea there, just to play with that thought of it probably spreads there. Right, we know it does spread around. Okay, good. Now, as you lift up the heels or you just shift your knees back and help yourself up, take that bolster, slide it off, and now you got two blankets behind it, and you're going to turn. You might like this blanket to sit on for this back bend. I'm going to use a block. It's traditional for me, but that might be interesting. So if you decide you want to sit on the blanket instead of the block, you could try that. But you'll turn so that your back is arching. I take a block, I put it under my tush, and it gives me a little more help in my back. You can also use that blanket or stuff the blanket a little bit more. I don't know what you'll stuff it with, but you could pack it in. And then as you lower back, you've got some sand maybe. Some of you might have a sandbag to put across the ribs. Be careful that the neck doesn't stay tight for long. Let it lower back and your head relax to the blanket. You can sort out the positioning even of your props when your head is back and down. I know it's probably just a given practice that we effort a lot with our neck to do activities. So maybe this could be you're gonna make a change with your yoga practice to see if you can ease the neck during these times. So I've got some support. Now I walk the feet a little wider than hips distance. And then I take a belt, unbuckled. It'll work out that way best. Okay, as I hold the belt wide, I reach the arms overhead, and I'm very generous with how I'm going to hold onto the belt. I'm going to have a loose grip. You can make the grip tight or you can relax it. But feel how a grip on the belt of any degree affects the breathing in the rib cage, whether you have sand there or not. If you don't like the sandbag on the ribs, take it off, okay? But we're starting with this position of the legs starting to stretch down. So both one at a time usually is a nice way to arrive in this horizontal chest opener. If the knees are kind of pressing down, feel the feet apart if that's better for your knees. There are days I feel, even though I have a tendency to push the back of the knees, if my legs are close together, I can kind of use them both to support a little micro bend of the knees. Like I imagine they're kind of tacked together. And they don't live this way very often, right? During the day, kind of pushed together. So why not play with it for this moment? Now separate your grip at all from the belt and slide the elbows wide. If you've got the blanket kind of sensation around the arms, see if you can, kind of let the blanket be something you're outlining with your arms. You feel a little touch to it, but it's not preventing you from opening the chest. And if at any time you need to bend your knees again, you just come back to the feet on the floor, bottom of the feet. That might feel better from time to time. Feel the sweep of the inhale. Feel the abdomen expand. And then lurk on that exhalation. And this might be a phase of practice where your breath is It seems important and nice to work with because of the ribs opening, but it's almost like a disappointing pace sometimes, pace or length comparative to other poses. So give it some awareness where the inhale, right? You might find you can easily go 4 to 5 counts. And then the exhale is the challenge, right? Trying to let that go longer than the inhale. That's why breathing face down is just easier for the lungs, proning, going face down. So here we spend the moments with the shoulders back. This kind of nice openness through the chest line to the collarbones. Relax the throat. If your legs are straight down, I want you to try this idea with the sand down to the top of the thighs or the hips. So it could be stop at the hips and it feels fine, or you just slide the sandbag so it's closer to the thigh lids. You decide, and you might fuss around a little bit with that until you feel directionally that is a press down to bring you just a little bit more core length. Just we're pretending. It's all pretending, right? It's a practice. It's a pretending practice. And with that experiment of that length in the front, even if it's just weight that's tractioning your waist, okay, feel the arms move back open. Take about 30 seconds here, not very long, but enough time to let this make an imprint along the circulation with the breath. Notice if it's going in the front body, primarily just straight up and down, or if it's in the ribs. I imagine it's probably kind of a boring line of breath. So your work is to broaden the breath across, so horizontally across the chest. Now, if the legs are extending, you're going to slide the sand away. And then also bring the feet. Let's take left foot in. If you've already started moving both of them, see if you can come back to the legs down and then slide the left foot in. So that left foot presses down. And then I try to neutralize the back of the pelvis. So there's a little bit of nutation. And so what this feels like to me is I'm trying to push to my left foot and then kind of lengthen my back, like almost tucking the tailbone. But you're going to slide the right foot in and you're going to bring that right knee up. Well, the foot goes up as if you're just moving your knee towards your chest. Okay, well, you are. Right? You might feel like trying. But when that knee moves in, you'll feel this strength in the left hip. A lot of coordination for the muscles, but also for the spine weave into the pelvis, just that connection and strength. So lower that foot. We'll have to give the other foot some equal time. So lift up the left foot and draw that knee in. It feels different. The last time we slid, we were out with the foot and then we drew it back up. So let's try that. Let's stretch the left leg straight down. Keep the right foot just pulled in, bottom of the foot down. And then as you slide the left foot in, you're going to tuck and move that knee towards the chest. You might have some control in your back. You might be bored. Happens too. That's where creativity comes from. And then lower the foot. And then I want you just to take an alternating knee to chest. Right, earlier in the session, we did the alternating, cat-cow patterns, moving the spine. Now it's moving from spine into the hip. And I know it's more than that, but let's know what's simply occurring. Okay, so feeling that movement. There might be some dullness in the lower belly, like it's not quite feeling strong from the position. So what you might take as a sense of connection here is every time the knee draws in, the foot that stepped down, you're really pushing into that foot. You're really working on the strength all the way up into that hip. So spend some moments with the foot that's down, that it really has a strong connection. Okay. Last moment, when you bring your feet together, your knees out, Baddha Konasana. Yeah, and if this is a kind of nice for the waistline, especially after creasing at the knee and the back, then you can kind of survey the sensation internally. Might be just a whole new way to exist, right? Not to be looking out and comparing. That's kind of a fun thing to do when you're at home doing practice, even with the Zoom situation. It's kind of a solo scene a little bit. Not a lot of comparison, right, with those next to you in the space. So it's a little more opportunity to venture, I think, in some way, in some funny way. Personally, very internally. And now this knee position, right, is putting a little bit of pressure through this rib cage. If you kind of touch to your ribs, you'll notice when your knees were up, they weren't like flowing out. This is like a 3% difference, right? It's not a lot, but they're prominent here, the front, okay? So now as the knees go back together, you're going to scoot the feet towards each other. And then I want you to push down into the feet, reach down to the block and remove it, or your towel or blanket if you had that stuffed in. And you'll put the block overhead. Actually, that feels kind of nice to feel that arch in the spine, the tail moving down. And so you can feel the sacrum gently guided at the bolster. And there's a little bit of a sacrum touchdown. And then I want you just to let your body roll to your left. Right, you want to be very kind of fluid here. And so you're turning to the left, and now you have this whole area kind of cut out for your pose. It's like a perfect cutout. You've got your bolster next to your ribs. You maybe have a ball or a block. Blocks work good too, on the inside of the right leg. And then as I lengthen down over, I'm actually going to use that other blanket. That works good on top of my other blanket. So I have a little more cushion for my neck. And then as I lean down to my left side, we've gone from the ribs jutting this way, right? And now those pieces now are elongating. And you want to create, like, in some ways you're making these new forms in your body, right? These new opportunities for circulation, blood flow. I mean, you might as well reinvent it, right? So turn the block at the highest point behind you. If that's not high enough and you are struggling and it's gripping in the shoulder, you can also use a stool or a chair seat for this one. And so as that side lengthens, maybe you add sand. I imagine most of you already have the sand on. But if you want to add a little bit of weight, you can put it up here on the side, or you can place it down to your hip. Kind of depends. I mean, is your hip feeling a little bit grippy today? Then put the sand on the hip, because we'll get to the hips and you want them to be kind of warming up naturally. Okay, now with that arm either over, or maybe you're wandering with it, or it's down besides on the blanket. It doesn't have to be pushed into this full exposed side sage. But let your eyes find that rest. And some of you might take your hardware off your, if you have glasses on, you might find, oh, this is a good time to remove for the moments, knowing that I trust will be here a good minute or more. And relaxing the sense of direction with breath. Just let it be, let it move. Maybe be curious about how the mind directs you right now, whether it's thoughts or plans or being present. So with the inhale, the field of focus here is the ribs. So we're working simply on expanding the rib cage. As you inhale, fill the lungs. And feel the stretch of the muscles between the ribs. So those are intercostals that push the ribs and make them lift. Right? So it's actual muscles between the ribs. And you get a feel of that length in just one side, right? It's only a one-sided length that you are claiming at this moment. I'm going to make the practice so it'll kind of divvy it up in between. We'll do some cycles of movement between these two sage poses. So trust we will get to the other side soon enough. But I want you to go with this feeling of I can't tell you to go with any feeling, but this feeling of if the sand is on, you might start to slide it off, or if it's on the hip, leave it. But turning so that the back of your head is a little more on the blanket, and you can open the chest so it feels like it's partially a twist. It's kind of an untwisting, right? Because a twist you would think you would be maybe a little different in this shape, but this is kind of an unravel. I don't think untwisting has been discussed often. It's probably unravel. Okay. Now, as I get rid of this pressure in my arm, right, there's a little bit of pressure system building in the armpit chest if you're choosing this. Now, if your shoulder's not going to go there at all, you still might work with your arm kind of a little lower and trying to get the pec right here in the chest area to get motion. Okay, let's turn back, unwind to the left, and then we're going to move on to our back completely. So you're going to move your sand. There's always props around. Prop play. Okay, no ball needed. You're going to take the whole blanket set you have, kind of all these props. You're going to move one of your blankets away and lift up your hips on the bolster and lower back. So there's space between your bolster and the blanket. That's important, that the blanket's not blocked in between. Okay, so bring the knees up or the feet up, and then we'll take up a block or a ball. If you have a ball, you can use either. Yep, if there's one overhead, just leave it because you'll need that block in a bit. So you'll place the block or ball between the knees. And I've used a ball most of the time for this for the last several months, so now this feels a little bit odd, but it's the same thing. It's a spacer. So when you go side to side with your knees, and whatever you've come from, right, it almost erases, right, when you get out of it. It's definitely certifies being in the moment matters. Whatever happened moments ago in the body, kind of, it matters for the cumulative effect, but we're focusing on how we stage through these poses. So as your knees go side to side, I want you to feel how the arms are open, but there's no pressure in the shoulders. So I'm not trying to bring them farther back or even at shoulder height. They're a little lower than shoulders. And then the knees go side to side. And there's plenty of back touching the bolster. Right? It's not just your tailbone. There's a little bit of the back. Even if you're really tall, you're going to still feel like this bolster positioning is starting to stretch your back a little bit because it's winding you side to side with the height of the bolster. Okay, now breathe in when the knees go center. Breathe out when the knees go to the side. Okay, breathe into center. And breathe out when the knees go side. And one more cycle. If you're changing the breath around, opposite, That might be interesting too. The nice thing is to have the arms a little bit low, so it's more a little more carefree in the ribs. And brain could be rolling with it or stay centered. And now next time you come in to the center, I want you to keep the feet off the ground. You stay, of course, up, I'm assuming. And then as you get a belt, where is that? Belt unbuckled. Okay, so I got my belt and I've got this kind of awkwardness here with this block. So, just get a feel of how you hold this block. And I know we've done quite a bit of core layers over time, off and on, with the knees up and moving the legs back and forth to stimulate the lower abdomen. But just keep this real simple. You lift your feet, and if you feel pressure in the knees, you've gone too high. So I want you to just be careful. I mean, we're all different with knee history, and I got my share, so I probably complain more than maybe you're feeling. But when you lift up the feet, make sure that you're pushing into the block. Now, my legs aren't straight up because it doesn't feel the best for me, but I have a hinge and I feel that if my legs do go straight up with the item between the knees still, it kind of grips up the hip flexors a little bit. The top of the thigh has a tension. So I want you just to notice that even if you put your hands, you slide them down the leg and you kind of insert your fingers into that thigh lid area. It's actually just below the thigh lid because it's at your hip bones. But as you kind of notice that area, I want you to keep, the feet could be, legs could be straight up if that's easy for you, like legs up. And I want you to let the legs just kind of shift a little side to side, okay? Kind of notice if that changes the flexor pressure, if it just goes away, just because you moved. Sometimes that happens. Okay, now remove the block and add a belt. You're going to add it to just the right foot only and lower the left leg down. That leg cannot wait to get out. Okay, so push through the foot, push through the belt maybe, and then find some resistance where you hold on and your leg muscles feel resistance. I want you to feel like you can push into that belt and forward. Now your head's got to be down, brain is back. So everything on the top layer is relaxed. Well, not really. I mean, you're holding your belt. You feel resistance. Okay. So I want you to energetically hook into this resistance in the leg. Just notice the leg has resistance. Here. Okay. Now take the belt so you connect it together. Then you hold the belt with the left hand. And then you're going to cross the right leg over to the left. And I want, the key here is to keep the resistance. So I know you'll feel, oh yeah, this is cranking on my hip now. It's starting to crank into it. It's getting cranky. But keep that foot still pushing downwards like you had a moment ago when it was up. You're pushing a little bit away. And then once your leg goes, well, it only goes so far, huh? It stops at some point. Unless you've got limitless leg here. Just get a feel here on this right hip, how you anchor through the weight of the leg reaching to the left. And your leg probably feels like, oh, it's kind of heavy. It can get heavier the more you push. But I want you to just get a feel here of that reach with the leg, the foot. Okay, now bend the right leg. And then as you come back center, you're going to bring your left knee up and then place that right foot to that left knee and hold the back of the left leg. So just take this for a few moments. It's going to feel maybe a little weird with the bolster under your pelvis for this version, but you've been in it before and just wasn't maybe like this. Just like a lot of things in life. This had been in this before, but I don't remember it being like this. So take the experience to work with stretching your back. This is the bolsters helping our backs lengthen. If it bothers you to have your body in this kind of weird pressure position, maybe in the back, you can always opt to have the same leg position, but lower your left foot down and let the knee move open. It could be here too. Yeah, two different options. Okay, just a few more moments. I hope this has felt a little bit in your right hip. Little right hip steeping. Breathing as if it's an assignment. You know, noticing when you let the leg lower back down, the right leg, just feel how we change on this side. We're changing slightly different, right? Right leg is releasing down. The belt, reach it and under the left foot, slide it there, stretch the left leg up, feel some resistance pushing the foot into the belt forward. Even if your leg is a little farther down this way, it's okay. That may be kind of interesting for you today. You know, so we might get in this formula of we kind of stiffen up the arms to do the position. But I didn't see that in any, you know, training manual that your arms have to stiffen up for this pose. I don't think I've ever seen that, but it's kind of interesting. So you could let the arms stretch up. And notice the quality of direction here for your personal experience. Maybe you need a different instruction too. So following what works for you. Close off the belt so the right hand takes it, both sides of the belt weave together, and then you cross the left leg to the right. You might be going across and down, right? You can feel the resistance, but I don't know if it's so much, and get a good clutch with the right hand on that belt. If it's uncomfy because of the buckle change, make it comfier for you. Don't suffer through trying to put your fingers around a buckle. It's just not really worth it in the long run here. But as you bend your left knee, micro bend it at least, you know, spend some energy, you know, maybe the leg flaps a little bit. Maybe you like to kind of feel little slight movements. Perhaps you like to bend the knee, or maybe pull the leg a little higher over to the right. So feel the ranges in this leg. This leg's going to swing the other way in a few moments in the other side stage. So it's nice to feel all these ranges of movement we access in our class. You know, it's good times. At least your body's going to kind of move away and feel like it's been rinsed a bit. The brain, that's a whole other topic. Okay. So when you feel that reach through the leg, maybe the abdomen has some say in it too. And now bend through the left knee. All right, so we're going to focus on kind of maintaining this cross pattern with the left leg. So I want you to take the belt, we'll slide it off, and then the right leg slides in, you hook that left foot to the right knee, it worked out. And you do it up on the other side. Yep. So that's pretty smart. So when you get a feel of that, it's like this opportunity with, you don't have to follow this, but when the leg crosses the belt, this is a nice follow through pose. Pretty rare we would do that in here too, actually, but maybe something new to add in. There's always some changes we could add. So when you're holding onto the back of the right leg, relax your right foot. All these different points of connection, knee to ankle, then the knee to the hip, just on one leg that you're cycling through. Yeah, if this side feels a little bit tighter, you might decide to put your foot on the ground and just get that left leg some time to loosen up into the hip track. Now, this feels different on the hip, but for most of us, than when we do Baddha Konasana with feet together, knees out. It's just a little different. So play with it. Okay, now let's switcheroo. So we're gonna go to side sage on the right side down. So you're gonna unwind through the leg if you need to do a little bit of a leg tantrum or, shake-a-roo, whatever you need to do, shake-a-roo. Play a musical instrument, you go for it. But when we switch to the next direction, we just roll to the right hip. Kind of how we got into the other side, right? We were pretty much like this. Yeah, we had a block under our seat, but it wasn't that much different. So turn to the right hip. I know I'm facing away a little bit, but accept my apology on that. I'm going to add the blanket because I kind of like that. My blankets at the back. And another thing you could do with that extra towel blanket, you might as well get a bunch of them before class ready, is you could also have the blanket here, right? If you're really long, this might be better, like to have this much length because you need sort of like a bigger bolster, like just a tiny bit more, okay? So we got the ball or the block on the inside of the left leg. If you don't have a ball, you're going to use a block, okay? And it's low. So I just put a block low on the inside. It takes a little bit of, the block's different. It makes it spaced up, puts a spacer there. But I know it's not as soft, it doesn't have a responsive surface. That's the reason why it's just not quite the same, but it still helps out. If you don't need a block or ball, you don't need to use one. If you find it's okay without. Add some sand if you like. And manage, that sounds like a direction, manage it. You're working on, you're kind of a body manager right now. You're your own body, you're managing your body. So when you are lengthening, sometimes you can manage it, sometimes you can't. It's just kind of the way it is. So as the arm is lengthening, this is really important for the armpit chest, the lymphatic drain here. So if I'm reaching and I don't have anything to touch onto, I can't even find my own block. You want to find some place for that hand if you're this way. If your shoulder is in a little bit of a quandary and this hurts, then you don't do it. Maybe you're here, opening the chest. Maybe your hand is on the bolster. Right? There's a couple of variations that might be a little more suited to you today. But manage the range of breath. Right? And if you don't like that block or ball on the inside of that leg, you can slide back and be kind of without it, or just partially with it. So even though there's an outline with postural patterns, we also want to get out of the box, right? So find what movement might be curious for you, even if it's nothing that I'm discussing at all. Maybe you're turning onto your back, maybe you're rolling side to side. Maybe you have your knees in more of a fetal position. Some people really like to do this pose this way. This is just how they do the pose. And it feels more comfortable. It's not bad. It's a different position for the hip. It may seem like less, but in some ways it adds on if you have that sandbag on your hip and stretches it downwards. Yeah. Try something new. Okay. So with that length, your head is relaxed. Maybe you took your glasses off if you have any on, and you're experiencing the movement of the ribs. Expand and contract. Let's say you have a hand overhead. You might sample just moving that block a little bit to one side or the other. Doesn't matter exactly, but notice when the arm is reaching, it affects your neck. Like maybe quite a bit for some of us in a good way, or maybe a curious you know, an uncertain way too. So the flesh of the shoulder, right, you can either move it back or you can rotate it a little bit in, even with the arm in the same position. Right, it's kind of funny. You could even put your hand on your, just up at the top of the arm, and the armpit can kind of sway open or close. Okay, so we're going to play a bit with this arm part, but I want you just to kind of feel your arm reaching, just bland reaching, a bland reaching arm. Okay, so as I feel that reach, there's these opposing motions. When you're on your side, like lying down, it's so much easier to get this kind of range than when you sit up. But just visualize you could do this sitting too. What would that be? Just visualize the arm gets it. Okay, now we're gonna rotate into the right, okay? And then as you start to come up, we'll simplify it today. We're gonna come up and sit on the bolster. I'm always trying to weave new ways of these patterns and kind of reset your clothing as much as you need to, but let's, or you don't have to, but let's take our blankies from the back and put 2 of them. I think 2 would be nice. That might be overdone, but we'll just start with more comfort than less. Okay. All right. Now we'll put the block, we're going to use our blocks. So I want you to have your blocks towards the front, and you're going to place your right foot on top of a block. We're all different heights, and so how's this going to work if I sit like this and I'm like this? Well, what might be helpful if you are rounding a lot in your back is to add another blanket. That's why we have these blankets back here. You can just slip one up underneath your seat so you have a little more height. If you're tall, I would just do that. If you're tall, you might likely be starting to round your back here. So we're going to add a sandbag to the left thigh. So we have a root leg. This is like our root. And then you're going to take the arm. Remember, let's see, last pose we had on our side, we had this arm up. Okay, so we'll repeat it. So my foot is pretty far forward and my knee is in a little bit of a hooked position. The knee kind of points out to about, well, it's like a 3 o'clock, right? It's just straight out to the left, to the right side. Okay. Yes, 3 o'clock's on the right. Okay, left arm goes up. See if you can kind of survey this in yourself. So I like to have some of these root positions, like hand on knee, then the other arm goes up. I know, it seems kind of serious, doesn't it? So when you have that movement up, does your shoulder pull up or your neck pull up? So I want you to try to turn the left arm so the hand turns back. Yeah, it's like the whole arm as a sheath is probably guarded, but you're going to try to turn that hand back so that palm faces behind, and then place that left hand to your back. That's a tough one. Hold on to the, put your right hand on that left elbow and press back. Okay. So as we're pushing into that left arm, try to sense the tricep, trying triceps. Okay, I feel how that tricep is resisting. Imagine you feel some of that. Okay, now reach the left arm, and the left arm is the reacher at the top of the body in the front. So you're going to cross the left arm over the right and give yourself a hug. So you've gone from this tricep and then cross the arms over each other. So hug with the left arm on top. So take a few moments with just that hug, reach around like you're trying to hold your shoulder as close into your blades as you can, and then lean forward, right? You're stretching your right hip. This is just like we did on our bolster when we had a foot hooked on the other knee. It's really no different. It just seems to appear differently. Okay. Try to keep that action through the inner thigh. The muscles are really working. And then we're going to take the left hand to the right knee, right hand back to the blanket, and twist. Okay. Some of you are used to doing these twists, real vigorous patterns where we cross the foot to the other side of the knee. That's fine. I mean, that's not bad work, but just consider this whole abdominal Or maybe that's just too minimal of a topic, right? This whole abdominal. but it's quite there's quite a bit in here that has all day you're working. It's working. It's got this whole little party going on, or it's this laboratory work, the organs. And so, consider that you want to give them some space to experience the rotation, the changing of circulation in the organs. So
You got
this,
a hand up, Nicole.
huh?
You have a hand up.
On my screen? Oh, yeah, it's okay. It does. I tried to turn that off on the Zoom thing, and are you unmuted yourself? You're not, you muted yourself again. Yeah, that's happening sometimes. So some of you might fling your arm up and then it'll say hand up. So maybe I have something to say. I'll be quiet. Okay. Unless I have something to say. All right, I'll have to check my, the whole, all the way through your Zoom features. Yeah, I thought I took that off, but who knows what I've done now. All right, so feel when you turn. Now, just for those of you that like to do a vigorous, not that this isn't vigorous, but the twist pattern, when you cross your leg over like this, you have to tuck the knee in a little bit center. It's just a different pulley through the back. Yeah, let's see if my hand goes down. See if it'll go back up. Okay. You can play with that and see if your hand goes up too. So you can take a little more vigorous effort with it, but I like the foot on the block sometimes too. Okay, now that we've been here a while, let's come back center so this part of your back isn't wrenched out, or get a wrench. Okay, you're going to stretch the right foot back, or the right leg back, actually. Left leg is in pigeon pose. It's been a while since we did this pose, it seems. So the blanket stack is under the knees. I kind of like the double knee pattern. The double blanket under the knee pattern. I feel like that feels pretty good. Double knee. Well, I guess it is a double knee here. But when you lower down, or we'll call it the Dublin knee. Okay. Lower down, have some blocks underneath your bones. Arm bones, hip bones are centering. And the back pattern right through the spine is probably pretty pulled into the centerpiece, right? So this is a good one to kind of lean a little side to side, wiggle, give yourself little wiggle rooms, right, from side to side. It's not a Zoom room, it's a wiggle room. And if the back leg can stay heavy, I know this left hip is kind of pouring with intensity, like a lot of pull into the hip. The shoulders should be out of the game, right? So they're not getting pulled around at all. Okay, now feel where the back has its opportunity to reach, right? So if I push down into my back knee on the blanket, okay, then I can let my back kind of lengthen. This is like a very subtle cat pose. But when everyone has a subtle cat. So as we bring the hands in, we're going to hook the toes under, or I don't think you have to hook your toes under to get back, but I seem to think you have to. So, maybe you find a different way than I've instructed there. But when I start to lift up, it seems like I have to engage my foot to get my left leg back. So when I bring my left knee back, you're going to alternate now with the legs. Well, they're pretty well lifted up your hips now, right? When you lift up your knees, your hips lift. Alternate that reach through the heels. So you're pedaling out, you're bicycling your pose here. Okay, now get a feel when you lower down your knees. Now the two blankets might be too much for some of us with our knees. I think it's interesting to play with things being on an even field. So when you have your bolster to turn it, just pivot your bolster, and then you'll make that Sphinx pose. So you'll reach down with your torso and your hips in your hip-so. So hip-so, torso, and then rib-so down. Okay, now once the ribs kind of flow, we're in cobra pose, right? So no cobras have limbs. So we're definitely using our spine. And then let your elbows lower down. Any of these things you can take what feels comfortable for you to absorb and not all of it probably. So when the elbows are touching down, feel how the weight of the waist. It's funny, it's not really, even though it's an area that things have to process, your waist area, your abdomen, that whole centerpiece of the body, it may not be what you feel like you pull around very much. Maybe your legs is what you kind of push around. So, give that area some massage here with the breath. So I have my elbows down and they really are helping keep my shoulders and my neck supported. All right, this is a good, smart pose. The cat has this one right, I think. Kind of a good perspective on strengthening the spine, like the whole time. Now, if this bothers your neck, you could tilt your head down. But if you tilt it down too far, then you start to, kind of possess this rounded spine issue. So see if you can work with that resistance a bit. Okay, slide the hands back. This might feel better for your back muscles. Elbows towards the sides, and then lift up. My chin is away from my chest. Okay, now feel where that arch occurs through the spine. And then as you come back to table, round your back, and then you got a big stack of blankies, some of you. Chin to chest. Inhale, arch the spine. Okay, now we're going to step the right foot to the top right corner, and I want you to turn the bolster across the mat so it's horizontal. So it's from one side to the other. And then walk that right foot over to the left. So you're in pigeon with the right knee forward. Now, we don't want to take too much time between the pigeons, but you have 2 pigeons. And so when you feel that revealed stretch through the right side, you could stay with the spine here. Okay. And we know that elbows down is kind of the trend on this one, but it is in restorative, right? Because that sleeping pigeon seems to be a repeated pattern, but the original shape is not that, right? The original named pose is the chest is up, right? The pigeon pose, the chest is higher. So we want to get a feel of, recognize some of those possibilities in your back muscles. And if it's too much stimulation in the spine, it's too rigid, then of course you could tip your head down and then maybe the hands out wider, but you'll still feel this extension out of your spine, right? So you're going to feel spine and extension and strength. That's a nice back core, kind of posterior core layer. I like this one. I think you can make friends with it after time. I guess that's just how you make friends. You got to have time with the pose. If it hurts, you bring your elbows down and you change it. So don't make it impossibly comfy, but feel how the spine, this is still a little bit of arch. Okay, now let's fine tune it. So we're going to weight into the right hip, left leg comes forward, and we find a block under the foot. Okay. This side, let's shift it up a little bit. So let's put our sand, if you have that, on the right thigh. And let's get a block. I know that we did that arm, we did the tricep turn. I think that's a kind of a nice, elegant way of moving your arm pieces. I like that pattern. Even if you don't feel like you're elegant in movement, it does help. But if I take a block between my hands so it's wide, and as I lift up, I'm going to kind of feel how it starts to get my back into my front, right? It kind of balances these layers, back to front, front to back. And then, if you were kind of a bear, you could notice oh, my ribs push forward or not. We don't have to get bare on this one, but get a feel for the very inner line of your spine, like how it moves and how if you hold a block, what you have to compose in your body to just hold this thing overhead. Even if it's kind of light, you still have to rally up right and left side. So bend your elbows a little more so that block goes to your back. It doesn't have to touch it, but it goes towards it. And notice if you try to touch it, if you effort a lot. Okay, no A's for over effort here. Just feel the elbows moved up. Okay, now block goes down, right arm goes up, palm turns back, hand reaches just up, and then bend the elbow and bring the left hand to that right elbow. And I think on one side we likely have a habit where the elbow kind of pulls in, and one side it's pushes out. They're usually a little different in their struggle. So, you're the only one that's going to be kind of possessed in this body. So kind of feel what possesses the movements for you. I think it's kind of interesting how to figure it out, especially as we age and our habits, become their own wiring pattern in our body, I think. So play with it. If your chest gets a little bit poofy, you're going to try to sit down a little better into your sitting bones. Cross the right arm over the left. Give yourself a hug, right arm on top. This just weaves together really easily. The back is just open. I'm just trying to pull my back open here. Come on back, right? See if you can loosen it up in the upper trap. I know the trap can feel brick-like, so spread out through the back. And then as I turn to the left, my right hand to the left knee and rotate. Yeah. If you need more underneath your left hand, you can always put a block. And you might notice, you pull your knee to get to turn because you need some sort of resistance, right? So those of us that are used to this position, see if my hand goes back up. You got to rotate to that left side so the right elbow hooks to that left knee. Those of you that want to put your foot to the other side of the right leg. And those that are comfortable with the foot on the block, just stay with that. Not that it's just or lesser than, but you might be using some different complex just rotation patterns, right? This one is really significant assignment in your right side of your back. This one with the elbow hooked to the left leg. And my foot's on the other side of my knee. If I'm here, my assignment in my back is a little more kind of funneled out. It spreads. Okay, so take a few more moments here. Maybe your eyes close. Now feel where the rotation maybe is at the end, right? Is it at the upper ribs are up here, but at the conjoined ribs, right under the chest area, you might notice that's where the last turning is. So compile the focus in your sitting bones and then turn back. Well, you're just unwinding forward, aren't you? Or we're winding forward. And take the feet so that they're together with a block. The sand could be awkward here, but take it off. Put your feet, so you've got a block, it's narrow, and it's between your feet. Yeah, resituate yourself here. So this is a little prep for when we go to the wall. We're going to go to the wall next. So I want you to get a feel for something between the pieces that are at the base of your body, right? So we'll just talk about these as pieces, right? They just are down from the hips. So when I have these two poles, right, they move out with the knees, and then the ankles kind of hold the feet towards the centerpiece right now, the block. So hands go back. Maybe you have a belt. Maybe it would be interesting to hold a block behind you. That would be quite the advanced position. But I'm holding a belt, so I'm I'm moving out with my arms, resistance. So now grasp your belt behind you and let your shoulders flow back. Okay, and work on that seated upright, even if it's like a very vulnerable kind of shape right now. It's a little vulnerable. You know, maybe you can sit with that for a few, even if you slide your feet forward a little bit, that could alleviate some of that inner hip pressure. If you can't stand the block at all between your feet, it's too much stretch. You can bring your feet together. That might be better for some of you sensitive wise, right? It might feel like a nicer balance for your bones, because the block is sort of an artificial piece. Okay. Now my arms kind of got a little bit slack there. So I'm going to work back to lifting them up. They didn't get an assignment, so I just kind of got lazy with them. But when I move my arms back, kind of visualize that there's something holding that belt behind you and pulling you back. You know how you sit upright and you think there's a string at the top of your head towards the sky? Maybe you sit up like that some days, but this is a nice opposite pull for the spine behind you. Okay, and then spine is up. Spine's up. Okay, now as you feel where the spine is strengthening, right, by the arm position, just kind of do a little check mark on this one, this awareness in your back. Okay, so we loosen this up. We're going to be using bridge pose with the belt like that again, which is when we're on our back. So it's a little confusing when you're on your back to see me do that. So just remember, this is when I ask you to hold the belt under your back, it's going to be this kind of hold, same thing. Okay, so let's go to the wall space. You can take the feet away from that block for now. And I think what I want us to do to get to the wall, if you need to do a little leg tantrum or shake it out, go for it. But take some time to get to your wall space and have a bolster. It's going to be sitting kind of in the side. So we'll go to the right side with the bolster. It goes to the right side, not that anything else but the bolster. Okay. So wherever you're setting up, I know you might be moving across the room. Then you'll have your blankets. You're probably using your second blanket when you do your final pose. So you might just keep that off to the side as well. I'm not sure where everything's going here. Okay, now lower down on your back. Okay, you do need a belt this time at the wall. So you might as well have all your goodies except for, I guess, all of them. You could use them all. So step the feet up at the wall. You want to be close enough, but not so tighty next to the wall that it's jamming your knees, right? So if I scoot my seat too close, then my knees might just feel a little bit of tension. You know, like when you do a lunge and it's too closed in, it really pulls around the muscles at the top. I mean, it's kind of a bizarre area, really. So place a block or a ball between the knees. If you have a ball, it's lighter, you might just use that because it'll just be a little bit less that you have to put energy towards. So you have a block or you have a ball. You still need your block for other things, but you have something between the knees. Now we're going to grasp onto the belt and we'll slide it under our rear. So the belt is below us, under us actually. Okay, behind us. It's a cross that's unbuckled. This is an unbuckled belt day. All right. Oh, I don't know what that means. Okay. Feet are a little bit up, so mine are not in some perfect form where they're right forward of the knees. I'm aware of that. I want to feel that when my feet push into the wall, that my hands are on my legs just mildly and I'm pushing, and then I'm just going to naturally lift up my hips and then take the arms overhead. Okay, now if you want your feet higher at the wall, you can walk them up, and you can change that maybe when you come back down. So just notice that when you lower down the spine now, maybe you want your feet higher up next time a little bit. Okay, so why would I have my feet higher up? Because it'll go higher up on the spine when I lift up my hips. It goes farther through the spine, right, to massage the back. You can use a blanket or not under your head. It's your choice. Okay, lower down once again. Okay, now this time, I want you to feel the arch of the spine, like you're pushing the back of the pelvis down, you feel the arch of the spine. Okay, make sure that when you lift your hips now, you're gonna have the belt. So you're gonna hold the belt just like you did moments ago when you were sitting on the bolster. You held the belt behind you and your palms are forwards and you're pulling it apart a little bit. So now notice when you have a blanket, right? You want to keep that blanket or not. So you choose. I'm going to go minus it on this exact position. Okay, so this is fine. There's probably our one pose that's a little picky. So now come back so the hips are up. You hold your belt and have a blocker ball between the knees. Try not to roll your head too much on this one side to side. It's not the smartest thing for our necks to roll back and forth when we're putting pressure on them. So we have our hands pulling the belt, and I want you to roll the shoulders in towards the spine. Yeah, so we're strengthening our upper back quite a bit here. So you're pulling, you're placing the shoulder blades back and down. If it gets too much, you just let go of the belt and don't spend energy on that. But stimulating the thyroid and not trying to shove the chin to the chest, but it's naturally going to be there, I think. It's already going to be set. Okay, now let go of the belt and then lower the spine down. You know, if that felt so-so, like it was intense, you might try the last one with your blanket. We're not going to use the belt again, but you might try the next few poses with the feet at the wall with your blanket under your head. So you choose. I go back and forth with the blanket necessity. Now we're going to remove the ball, and now you're going to need 2 blocks. Okay, so feet at the wall, hips distance. Tailbone feels like it presses down, so there's a natural arch, like there's a little tiny bit of space that's probably invisible, but there is a felt sense of arch. And now elbows by the sides, like robot arms. I'm really trying to press down to my elbows, feel the arch in the spine. And then I want you to feel like your feet push into the wall, but also they slide a little bit down. I mean, energetically, they're pressing and they're pressing into the wall and a little bit down. Lift the hips and then take a block under the pelvis. And for some of you, you might, if that belt is in the way, I guess you might have to get rid of that, huh? Some of you might add 2 flat blocks, okay? 2 flat. And then you get your back so it's set the pelvis on the blocks. And then bring your feet either down so the toes are stretched up at the wall. Hip flexors opening. Really nice kind of final spinal, I feel, in the ending of this practice today, these openings. Now, if this is too much for you, you can also bring your legs up. You might find this is easier than you thought. So you decide, oh, we are going to do legs up the wall at the end, but if you want to go here versus feet down, you could still get the back arch with the feet up or feet down. Okay. So be a little careful here at this hip juncture. My ribs, I can kind of use my knuckles to kind of massage, not the very side flesh, but under the side flesh that wraps around to my spine. I want to get that area. You can kind of push the flesh around and kind of jiggle it a little bit so that area is lengthening as much as it's defining the moment here, the stretch in the back. I know it's more of a front stretch, but you feel the back move. Okay, make sure the ribs are expanding. Let the arms be down by the sides. Hands towards feet. Okay, breathe. If the 2 blocks is too many, you can go down to 1, but that's fine. And now, careful when you come out. You'll lift up a leg and then you'll step it to the wall and lift up out of another and step it to the wall. And then press into your feet. Keep sensitive in the neck because this is just going to stretch the neck even more. push into your feet and then slide the blocks away from your whole space. Just toss them out. Watch them go by. And then massage through the spine to come down. Lower down slow. So each lowering massages through the vertebral spacers. Right, hydrating the discs. That's what comes next, the hydration. So as you slide your feet down, you might need to bring your knees to your chest and hold the back of the legs, kind of at the back knee pocket. I guess the back knee socket, the socket pocket. And then rock side to side. And now lower down your feet, slide the blanket back, and then you slide with it. So you're going to slide back until your right leg is straight with your foot at the wall. And then you're going to reach the left knee bending over to that bolster somewhere over that right side. So if it's kind of far down and you need to slide the bolster up so that the leg actually easily lays on it. If you need a blanket on top of the bolster, just take it. Take in as many props as you need to get support under that left leg. If you have a ball, these are really good for this one. You can kind of nudge it into the sacrum area so it becomes this spacer. It's kind of a mystery how this really does a little bit of that spacing work. And then add a sandbag to your outer left thigh. Now enjoy these last three poses. They're kind of ones that you can soak in. So the sand goes to the thigh or whatever you might have, a bag of weight. A bag is full of something. Open out the left arm and then feel, where is your head on top of the spine? Like, are you trying to move it back, tensing it, or can you let your head nod? And feel its natural flow and circulation through the jaw. If you are pulling on your sandbags, it feels so good to get that extra tug into the hip, then you might just position it so you don't have to effort with your hand. Just kind of play with that and accept it. I know it's usually a little richer when you're kind of forcing and pushing, but see if you can absorb what good you get out of just the sandbag and the positional awareness. And let's take a few moments here. Take a 10. Right foot doesn't have to touch the wall anymore. You might have it kind of bending through the knee and the foot may slide a little away. But ease up your back. Now, when you do start to prep the shifting here, feel how the shoulder kind of easily, by this time, has some momentum with the chest, right? They work together nicely. When you've moved your arms open like this over and over again, they start to, you start to get into restorative mode versus standing in busy mode, right? The arms drop differently. So just own this, right? This openness with your chest. It's part you now. And then when you slide that sand away, you'll unwind. You have to take some energy into how to get that bolster on the other side. I know it takes a little bit of turn of events there with the bolster to the left, and then the left leg doesn't have to be straight, but I want you to get a feeling of the leg goes downwards and lengthens, and then you take the right leg over. So now that you've done the first side, you know the second side, you can already bend the left leg, and then it helps the twist, right? Bending something helps you rotate in the axis of the spine. You have to bend something to get rotation, I think. That's not true with some things that grow, I guess, but just as you, as a human working with these poses, we'll keep it simple-minded there. So sand on the right leg, and then ball to the sacrum, right arm is open. Keep it simple, just easeful. Now, the farther that weight goes to the knee, it's likely to give you an advanced amount of circulation in the lateral tissues of the leg, whether it's muscles you talk about, or let's just think superficial, just the skin. Right? So we don't need to declare any, any science on it, but we know that that's flowing that direction to the left. So as you open out the right side, let your head turn to it. Eyes resting. If you have glasses on, you want to take them off. I think we're venturing to the final moments where you could be somewhat easeful without that addition on. Okay, so feel where the leg crosses, feel where the spine kind of intervenes with the position sometimes. So breathing slow. When both sides have had this momentum through the spine, hips, leg, then we're going to kind of convene on that drain for all. So we'll go into legs up, or some people call it waterfall pose. So you'll slide the ball if you have that out. You don't really need that anymore. But moving the sand, I sometimes like coming out of this just rolling out. It's pretty traditional, you teach that roll out. And so when I put the bolster next to the wall, I sometimes enjoy getting into this pose from a forward bend. So I occasionally like to just kind of stand with my seat to the wall, and my feet obviously at the bolster is going to kind of hold that balance. Some of you might go, no way, I don't want to get up again. That's okay. You don't have to. You could go into legs up just coming from sitting and then swing them up. But sometimes it's nice to go here and just let the spine drain out and get its full length with your seat to the wall. It's a little bit of a balance challenge. And then when you slide down, you're going to sit on one edge of the bolster, and then you'll inevitably go to one side. You got to go all the way to the side, otherwise you're going to fall off on the other side. Got to be right on the edge of that bolster, and then when you swing the legs up, some of us will feel like, oh, we want to get into this pose by being on our back and crawling our hips to the wall, but finding that twist and spinning up is quite useful. It takes just practice, which is very true for this one. So now you can either put your other blanket on top of your core, you can add your sandbag to your feet. And I like that. We didn't give a lot of time to that forward bend idea, but I do like to do that before getting my legs up the wall. So once I send out that homework piece, maybe you can practice that first, getting into it with your body in a forward bend. So feel where the legs are lifting. I know it's an illusion they are, because the wall's holding them up. And when you have that base layer of the bolster underneath, it creates this waterfall effect, right? The abdomen is the pool. The throat is a pool, right? The thyroid area, that's a whole pool of circulation right now. You got a couple different whirlpools here. I know, and they may get set up and start to make noises. So before you turn on any power in that area, feel where the hands are comfortable, but truly add some warmth to your pose. If you're feeling any sense of needing some extra comfort, you can put a blanket on your centerpiece of the body, let your hands rest there, the hands open, and just resisting reality calling you back. See if you can turn the focus in for a few moments. Center the lift of the breath in the belly. And then feel it return back. So there's a whole spring of breath with the stomach. And it's such an amazing pattern in the core of the body, however that sounds to you, but just the spring load of movement. So resting the organs from gravity's downward pull is what we're doing here. We're resting them, we're rejuvenating the glands in the throat. And strengthening the breathing muscles. Let your head nod with its weight on the floor, on the blanket. Let it nod side to side. Next time you come into center with your head, feel where the spine lengthens to the neck. Well, it is part neck, right? The spine. And that area might feel a little different than your mid back. I mean, it's a different density of connection to the ribs, right? The upper spine. So feel how the legs are kind of little spines on their own. And then as you flow the legs away from the wall, there's resistance just to keep them there. And those that have a sandbag, you'll want to move that. So you bend the knees and you'll take the sand to the side. And then as you hold on to the backs of the legs, rock a little bit side to side. Roll to the side and turn to come up, sit against the wall if possible. And so you can feel when you sit back, the arms moving back. Maybe the arms go up for a second just to get a feel of the shoulder blades and the spines in some way disconnect right here. They are in their own little playing field. And then bring the hands down and up into the front of the body. So the palms in unity in front of the heart space. And surrender. Let's unite our breath for a simple moment to preserve and absorb the practice and noticing the sense of balance or even a little spark of connection to your center. May that be present for you, and also sensing awareness outwards to the world. Support and peace. Inhale and exhale, bowing into your heart.